What if I told you that Wall Street was built on slave labor? What if I told you that when you think of New York City as the land of the free, that you're believing one of the biggest lies in American history? What if I told you that northern states didn't just benefit from slavery, that they were the financial backbone that made it possible? This isn't about the cotton fields in Georgia. This is about how your children are being taught that the northern folks were the good guy in slavery, when the truth is that northern merchants, bankers, and factory owners got rich off the backs of enslaved people. Now, before I expose how the North built this wealth on human bondage and why they've hidden this for over 150 years, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're building a community of truth tellers who refuse to let the real history be whitewashed. You know what opened my eyes to this story? Just this past month, I watched the documentary Who We Are, a chronicle of racism in America featuring Jeffrey Robinson. I found myself wishing that all of America was in that room with me as he brilliantly laid out how America as a whole benefited from enforcing chattel slavery. I don't want to give too much away, but I will encourage you to watch that video. In it, he lays out exactly who the northern states were that capitalized from chattel slavery and how they did it. As I watched, I became more and more motivated to do this video. My own lived experience coupled with the documentary brought me to the conclusion that many Americans are not fully aware of the truth regarding the North's reliance on chattel slavery, because all of the focus has always been on the South instead. When we think of slavery in the United States, the picture that often comes to mind is one of sprawling southern plantations and endless cotton fields and enslaved men and women forced into back-breaking labor under the hot sun. The South, in popular memory, is the land of slavery, but there's another side of this history, a side that is less often talked about. The northern states, those celebrated as free soil, were far from innocent bystanders. In fact, they were deeply invested in slavery, profiting from it in ways that fueled their own prosperity. Northern merchants, bankers, shipbuilders, and industrialists depended upon the labor of enslaved Africans, sometimes directly, often indirectly. Today, we'll explore how northern states, and especially cities like New York City, thrived because of slavery. This is the story of hidden prosperity that they never wanted you to discover. I'm going to take a break from the script for a moment and share with you something that I personally recently encountered just a couple of days ago. I found myself calming myself down once again as I evaluated this article about the current administration's attempt to erase information from the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture based on they are talking too much about slavery. Then I took a look at our money. George Washington enslaved over 123 souls, and his face is on the $1 bill. Thomas Jefferson enslaved over 600 souls throughout his lifetime, and his face is on the $2 bill and a nickel. Andrew Jackson enslaved over 300 souls throughout his lifetime, and his face is on the $20 bill. And there's more. And then I thought to myself, if they don't want us to focus so much on slavery, then how about changing the faces on the money that enslaved people produced, with people that have demonstrated that they believe that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that of which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, there's a novel concept. Okay, back to the video. It's important to start with the fact that surprises many. Slavery was not just a Southern institution. In the colonial period, slavery was legal in northern colonies too. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania, and others. In New York City in the early 1700s, almost 1 in 5 residents enslaved souls. Now let that sink in. That made the city home to one of the largest urban enslaved populations in North America. Enslaved Africans in the North worked as dockhands, domestic servants, skilled artisans, and farm laborers. And while the northern states began to pass gradual emancipation laws after the Revolutionary War, the freedom they promised was delayed, sometimes by decades. For example, New York's 1799 law did not end slavery outright. Instead, it declared that children born to enslaved mothers would one day be free, but only after serving the mother's enslaver until adulthood. True abolition didn't come to New York City until 1827. So even as the North celebrated liberty and independence, it continued to profit from enslaved labor at home. They were celebrating freedom while holding people bondage. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Northern involvement in slavery did not end with emancipation laws. Far from it. Northern merchants became the lifeline of the slave trade itself. Rhode Island was the epicenter of this system. Historians estimate that ships from Rhode Island ports made approximately 1,000 voyages carrying enslaved Africans across the Atlantic. Note to self, these were not Southern ships. These were Northern ships crewed by Northern sailors owned by Northern investors. New York City and other northern ports became the hubs for the business of slavery. Insurance companies insured their ships and their human cargo. Northern banks extended credit to Southern planters so that they could buy more land and enslave more people. Northern investors financed voyages that turned human beings into commodities. The financial and shipping networks stretched from New England to the Caribbean to Europe could not have functioned without the North. They were the money behind the misery. Now, if you're starting to see how deep this deception goes, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the industrial connection will shock you even more. By the early 1800s, the North was industrializing at a rapid pace. New England textile mills in places like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut transformed the raw cotton into finished cloth. These factories employed thousands of workers, creating jobs and fueling the rise of northern cities. But where did the cotton come from? The answer? Enslaved hands in the South. Southern enslaved laborers planted, tended, and harvested cotton that fed the machines in the northern industry. Without their labor, the textile industry, the backbone of northern industrialization, could not have thrived. Think about that for a moment. The profits of northern factory owners, the wages of northern workers, and the rise of northern cities were built on cotton picked by enslaved people hundreds of miles away. Now, before I say this, let me proclaim that I have no affiliation with the company Actively Black. However, as I share this video with you, I am proud to be wearing a t-shirt produced by Actively Black. On the front, it says Actively Black Premium Cotton. And on the back, it says made from cotton grown by Black farmers. Now, I go on the record stating that Actively Black did not ask me to plug them. I'm just sharing with you how I feel wearing this shirt right now. But okay, back to the video. The economic destinies of the North and the South were intertwined, no matter how much Northerners like to distance themselves from slavery in principle. No city demonstrates this hidden dependence better than New York City. By the 19th century, New York had become the financial capital of the United States. And what fueled this rise? Cotton. Shipments of cotton flowed through its ports before being exported to Europe. Merchants in the city grew wealthy handling and financing this trade. Wall Street, the symbol of American finance, was built on these ties. Banks in New York City lent millions to Southern planters. Investors bought securities backed by plantations and enslaved people. Insurance companies wrote policy that ensured enslaved people were property. New York's prosperity was so tied to slavery that when the Civil War approached, many of its business leaders feared the conflict, not because they opposed slavery morally, but because they feared the collapse of the cotton trade. In 1861, on the eve of war, some of New York's leading newspapers even argued against secession, not to preserve the Union, but to protect the city's economy. This was not the story of a free city. This was a story of a city whose wealth depended upon human bondage. When we take a step back, the picture becomes clear. Northern prosperity rested on Southern labor. Shipbuilders in New England built vessels for the slave trade. Merchants sold rum, iron, and textiles in exchange for enslaved Africans. Insurers and bankers made fortunes financing the trade of human beings, and the textile mills churned out cloth using slave-grown cotton. Slavery was not a regional institution, it was a national one. The South supplied the labor and the raw materials. The North supplied the ships, finance, and the industry. Together, they built an economy that made the United States a rising global power. Now, let me tell you about something that happened just this month that proves how this deception continues today. On August the 14th, 2025, Jillian Michaels, a figurehead on the social front, downplayed the role of slavery during an appearance on CNN's Newsnight with Abby Phillips. During the segment, she defended the current administration's call for a review of the Smithsonian Museum to remove what they are labeling divisive narratives from their exhibits. Her claim is that less than 2% of white Americans own slaves. She went on to state, you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. Jillian Michael argues against the idea that it was white people oppressing black people in the context of American history. Her statements are clearly subjective and are not factual, nor do they capture the full scope of chattel slavery, which is why we witness bad actors like Jillian Michaels give bad information. In a powerful response, historian Nicole Hannah-Jones, author of the book The 1619 Project, called out Michael for spreading misinformation and using a misleading statistic to minimize the specific systemic nature of slavery in the United States. She says this is exactly why history matters. When people like Michael say that only 2% own slaves, they're ignoring the millions who profited from slavery without owning people directly. The northern bankers, the shippers, insurers, and factory owners whose wealth was built on enslaved labor. The story we often tell that the North was the land of freedom and the South was the land of slavery is far too simple. The truth is harder to face. Yes, northern states abolished slavery earlier, but they remained deeply dependent upon it. Cities like New York grew rich from the cotton trade, Banks, insurers, and merchants made fortunes on the backs of enslaved people. Factory and workers in New England relied on the raw materials harvested by enslaved hands. Slavery was not only the foundation of the South, it was the foundation of America's rise. Northern prosperity was tied directly to Southern exploitation. When we confront this history, we are reminded that the wealth of the nation was built on the suffering of enslaved African Americans. Their labor, their endurance, their stolen lives enriched not only Southern planters, but Northern merchants, bakers, and industrialists as well. To truly understand America's past, we must tell the full story, because only then can we reckon honestly with the roots of American wealth and the legacy of slavery that still shapes our nation today. Now that you've made it this far, I've created an interactive exercise for you. See if you can identify a percentage of the enslaved population that were living in northern cities, and see if there was a dollar amount of northern profits from slavery. And see if you can identify specific company names and the slave connections with them. I want you to tell your grandchildren how Wall Street was built on slavery and see how they respond. See if they knew. Share how your grandparents used to say to you, and then type in the family connections. Identify specific museum exhibits that are currently being challenged. See if you can connect current reparation debates. Also see if you can identify any modern corporation who is apologizing for their historical slave ties. I want you to also see if you can name specific northern families or companies that profited from slave labor. Describe the actual slave markets in those northern cities. See if you can detail specific insurance policies on enslaved people. Yeah, I want you to do some digging, because this is how we unlock Black history. And when you find those answers, please share them in our comment section. This is the history that they're hiding from your children and your grandchildren. This is why they want to remove dismissive narratives from museums, because the truth is divisive to their false narrative of Northern innocence. When people like Jillian Michaels say slavery wasn't that widespread, they're erasing the millions of Northerners who built their fortunes on human bondage. They're protecting the lie that has been told for over 150 years. And your family needs to know that slavery wasn't just a Southern problem. It was an American system of wealth extraction that enriched the entire nation. If this hidden history opened your eyes like it did mine, I need you to do 4 things right now. First, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so that you will never miss these truths they're trying to bury. Second, share this video with your family, your church, and your community. Comment below and tell me, did you know that Wall Street was built on slave profit? Third, join our private Facebook group where we continue these conversations and share resources to counter the misinformation. The link is in the description. And fourth, watch Who We Are, a chronicle of racism in America. And read the books I've cited in the description. Knowledge is power, and truth is our weapon to defend against these lies. Don't let them whitewash the North's role in slavery. Don't let them reduce the national system to a regional problem. Subscribe, share, and join the community of truth tellers. I'll see you at the next video where we'll uncover another truth that they didn't want you to know. Take care.